It's day 485. It's also September 2nd, 2020. And we are in Craig, Iowa. You ever wake up in the morning and ask yourself, what am I doing? And more importantly, why? Yeah, me too. Hi, my name's Craig, and this is my story. A story about life. Life out there. For visuals while listening, to watch the video versions of this podcast, or even just to say hey, check us out on our website at lifeoutthere.me. Wow. It's almost hard to believe that it's been 16 months. Almost 70 weeks. 485 days. Since I first hit the road in this old RV with my two little buddies. I thought the story I'd be telling would be simple. That I sold everything and headed out on a cross-country move. Go see America. But not so simple, I guess. I'm still wrapping my head around the difference between what I had envisioned and what this adventure has become. The first thing I realized, I might have mentioned it before, but that simply moving across the country and starting a new adventure in a new place, well, that quickly became something very different. How quickly I had realized this country's huge. And when exploring it mile by mile, well, that's gonna take a while. It had become clear that I was no longer interested in simply getting to a destination. Instead, the destination would keep changing. And pulling into this place called Craig in Iowa, I thought back to day 170. And those days spent outside a place called Beatty in the Nevada desert. And how time had already begun to shift for us. I was no longer measuring time by the ticks on a clock, or a schedule mandated by others. It was more about sunsets and sunrises. And that was with just 5,000 or so miles behind us. And here we are, 315 days later, and another 10,000 or so miles under our belt. And so much learning, so many different realizations, and mostly constantly learning just how much I don't know. And somewhere along the way, something else happened. I realized I wasn't just chasing places. I was also chasing names. My name. That's what brought us here. Just 145 miles out of Fort Dodge. A road sign, a water tower, and a big grain hauling truck, all bearing the name Craig. This time, not in Colorado, not in Montana, but in northwest Iowa. Population? About 75. We pulled under the shade of an oak tree beside a quiet little park. Dougie was stretched out in the grass, and I caught myself wondering again how many towns share my name. Turns out, more than I thought. A dozen, maybe 14. Nope, the list keeps going. As far away as places like Trinidad and Guyana, ghost towns even, and more if you count the name Craigsville. I thought again about writing them all down, but then decided, we'll find them randomly, just like this one here in Iowa. And right away, this place felt still. The kind of still that makes you notice everything. The way the air carries the smell of corn. The silence broken randomly by a dog barking a few streets away. And Craig, Iowa is exactly what you'd expect a 75-person town to be. Modest. Hard-working, no doubt. And obviously rooted in agriculture. Corn, soybeans, cattle, hogs. The kind of land you don't just live on, you inherit. The story here isn't just about crops or head counts. Like every small town in America, you can tell this Craig is built on something deeper. This land was once Sioux land. Sauk and Meskwaki peoples lived here long before settlers, and the French explorers would pass through in the 1600s. And then the U.S. government made its Black Hawk purchase in the late 1830s. But still, it wasn't until April 26 of 1911 that Craig officially became a town. And named, best I can tell, after a Sioux City attorney named Craig Wright. The first buildings? A Lutheran church and a grain elevator, both still standing more than a century later. And just like so many towns, it would be the railroad that stitched Craig into the larger fabric of America. Not to make it big, just to keep it alive. And that's what struck me most when reading about this Craig. Survival here doesn't and didn't mean growth. It meant endurance. And walking with Dougie past that farmer's co-op, I got a close-up look at that big shiny feed truck. And a little time on the internet over lunch would tell me that this is quite the high-tech, GPS precision-controlled. A truck that can load or unload 7,000 pounds of grain in a minute. And I thought, this tiny little town isn't stuck in the past. It's adapting. Quietly, without fanfare. We didn't meet many folks. Just that group of kids running up to pet Dougie, laughter trailing off behind him. A guy in a pickup truck rolling down his window and asking, "Whereabouts?" pointing to our Washington plates. "Tacoma," I responded. "Ah, Bothell," he replied with a smile. He'd spent 2 decades in Washington but came back to care for his mom. Said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. And maybe it is. Family. Returning home to where family had begun. Taking care of that family. Here's what I keep learning. Towns like Craig don't make headlines. Most don't know where they are. They don't go viral. But they hold steady while the world spins louder and faster every day. And in that steadiness, I think there's something worth paying attention to. Because while I sat here, watching Dougie stretched out in the grass, I couldn't help but think of the bigger picture. How back home, in so many places in the world, people were still arguing about masks and lockdowns and vaccines. The country feels fractured. But here, it felt like time had slowed down just a bit. No masks, no politics, just a place quietly doing what it's always done. And Craig, Iowa reminded me that sometimes America isn't about the chaos. It's about the corners that stay grounded. I thought back over so many other places just like this, in so many ways. Rangeley, Daniel, Union, Heppner, Wolf Point, Ray, Fontenelle, so many. 87 stops behind us so far, and most of them very much like this little spot in Iowa. We wrapped up lunch under that oak tree, flipped through some photos, and I remembered the pit stop we'd made just 19 miles back in a place called Lamar's. The ice cream capital of the world. Founded in 1869, built by English settlers, it would become the home of the Blue Bunny, world-famous ice cream. A town that, even during the Great Depression, fought back against foreclosure. Another story of grit, hidden right there in plain sight. As I looked at the map, the road pointed towards a place called Akron, Iowa, just 16 miles away. There's an RV park with hookups, showers, a pool, a big community park, and all for $10 a night. Not bad. But more than that, another chance to learn, another chance to piece together a bigger story, and another realization. This adventure isn't really just about places. It's about trying to understand America. One town, one conversation, one story at a time. Akron, Iowa. I wonder what we'll learn there. This thing called life comes with a lot of rules. Maybe it's time to break a few. Because you can. No, seriously. You can.